Hey, and welcome to Honest to Pod, the podcast where each week we pick something different to ramble on about. Current events,
Personal growth.
unicorning.
Oh. And shoehorning.
Ooh, I'm Ashley McAllister.
And I'm Matthew Ali.
And this is episode 10.
Trois. No, I need another language. I've typed in something, and I typed in 103 when I wanted to type in something else. Such an idiot.
Un, dos, tres.
Uno, dos, tres. Yes.
All the goodies say I'm pretty fly for a white guy. Dum, 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 dum.
Is that 103? Does he say 103?
There he goes.
Oh.
Un, dos, tres, cuatro, cinco, cinco, seis.
Great song. Who sings that?
Offspring.
Okay, that's good. Do you remember Wheatus? Teenage
Love
Dirtbag.
Wheatus.
That's a legendary song.
I'm just brilliant song. Cause I'm just. Who was in the video of that? Oh, the girl from American Beauty was in the video for that. I think.
Yeah, and American Pie she was as well, wasn't she?
She was in American Pie. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, she was American Pie.
Yeah. Hey, Matt.
Hey, Ashley. How are you?
Yeah, good. I had so much sleep last night. I feel energized.
That's good. You do struggle with sleep.
I do. In the heat as well. I do.
It's not hot in the rooms though, isn't it? I think even though it's hot outside for the... I guess I'm wrong.
My attic room is boiling, but I spent the weekend at Craig's and they have the house, the heating turned on all day, 23 degrees.
Listen.
And then the mom sleeps with a fan on because she's too hot. And I'm like, turn down the heat. Just
that
turn
doesn't
it
make
down.
sense. She's like, let me use double the energy as opposed to none of the energy in the house. She's global warming. She's climate change.
She's fucking warming me up. Woof. As a result of all the sweating, I got a massive spot right in the middle of my... Literally, it could not be placed better. Obviously, I've got concealer on it.
I was wondering why it wasn't red.
Yeah, it's right. Can you see it there?
I mean, I saw it.
Yeah.
There, and there.
I mean, I squeezed this mat, and the amount of crap that came out of this.
I might have to say this, and I did have him as a teenager on my arms and chest, but it's just something I'm so thankful that I don't have to go through on my face.
Because I've not had a spot on my forehead for a long time, but it came up, and the first thing I did was buy all those products that I spent a fortune on before.
How's your week been?
My week has been good. I've had a really nice week. Had a few really dodgy customer experiences, but apart from that, it's been good. Shall I tell you about them?
Yeah, of course.
Right.
I love telling you why you're wrong, because I know you're a terrible customer. This is the problem. You are a terrible customer. If there's a man named for Karen, which I think there is one, but I can't remember what it is, you are that.
So, first one, Hummingbird Bakery.
Overrated, but yes, carry on.
Overrated, okay. I love them, and they do really nice. Well, the only thing they do now is gluten-free red velvet cupcakes. They used to do a bit more, but their gluten-free selection has dwindled.
It's Corona, bitch. Don't roll your eyes. Selections are less.
No, it was before Corona.
Oh, fair.
Yeah. So the gluten-free range has dwindled, but I go over there and I queue outside, and they have a sign before you can see the sign on the door. It says, well, the sign on the door says 2 people at a time. They also do Deliveroo. So ahead of us in the queue is a group of 3 girls. Delivery drivers coming and going. I'm there with Craig, and the group of 3 girls go in. They get their cupcakes. They leave. Whilst they're in there, delivery drivers come and go throughout this whole thing. Then the 3 girls leave. This one guy ahead of us goes in, and delivery drivers come in and come out. He then leaves, and there's one delivery driver still left in. So the both of us go in, and we're holding hands. The both of us walk in, and the lady says, "Oh, guys, you have to wait outside." We're like, "Oh, why?" So it's 2 customers at a time. I'm like, "Well, that's Deliveroo, and he's over at a different counter." She goes, "Doesn't matter, he counts as a customer." I'm like, "All right." I said to Craig, "Well, it's the first time you're at Hummingbirds. Why don't you stay in and say what you want? Because I know what I can get. Like, there's fuck all I can choose from. But for you, there's a few more." And he goes, "No, he'll wait." And then we go in, and she serves us. And whilst we're in there, they invite another Uber driver in, which just really, really, really pissed me off. So I was mad. I was because when we were put outside, the family behind us said, "Is everything all right?" She goes, "Well, it just says that they're not allowed more than 2 customers at a time." She goes, "That doesn't make any sense because there's been like at least 5 people in there at one time." I'm like, "I know." So in my head, it was homophobic.
Okay, it's Hummingbird Cafe, bitch. Bakery.
Well, this is it, and I emailed them and I said, "Look." I said,
you've
look,
got a lot of free time on your hands.
I am furloughed. I do. I said, I know you are an inclusive blah, blah, blah. And they were very quick in calling me back saying, I can reassure you that it was nothing like that. And I go, but how do you know? Because you've not actually spoken to the team yet. And she goes,
well, they said it wasn't like how you described it. That was their response.
They're saying it because I had said, given the facts that I had seen and that we were the only 2 that were asked to stand outside and wait.
You did not just say that it was homophobic to them.
I said, I didn't say it was homophobic. I said the only reason I can think of that we were separated was because we had gone in holding hands. Well, that's the way I perceived it. That was my experience.
I have not said anything. Just continue.
I know. Well, that's my experience. And she goes, I can guarantee you it would not have been homophobic. And I said, I can get that you are saying that, and I think obviously you have to say that. And I'd like to believe you. I've been a fan of the brand for years, bought cookbooks, fattened myself up nicely on your cakes, thank you. But my experience wasn't one of inclusivity. It was one that I had walked into a shop with my partner, and given that customers before us had gone in groups of 3, had customers up to 5, it seemed odd to me as a person walking in holding hands with their same-sex partner that is the moment that your sales assistant decided to enforce the 2 customer rule. And then she said to me, "Oh, I mean, she must have got confused. Maybe she came off a break and didn't realize." I was like, "No. She was her. It was her. It wasn't. There's no. You can't get confused if the sign says 2 customers, but then you're letting 5 in at some point. But whenever I go in and there's a total of 3, you're telling me we have to separate and let 2 in. But then once we're in, then you invite other people in." I said, "It seems very strange." She was, "I can guarantee you it's not." And I was like, "Well, could you check with the team, please? Because you've just called me straight away. You've not spoken to anyone there on the day." She said something, and I said, "Well, even if that isn't the case, like even if you are a very inclusive brand and you do that, this could have been a case of unconscious bias. You need to speak to the team and let me know the outcome, because I don't, as much as I appreciate you calling me quickly to pin down this accusation or alleged homophobic experience I had, my experience is my experience, and there's no, looking at the facts, there's no other way for me to interpret that."
I fear that you may have taken our lessons over the past 2 years a bit too literal.
What do you mean?
Because I can't support you in this. I cannot.
Why? Tell me why. Tell me, out of the experience I had, it was potentially not homophobic. I'm not saying it was homophobic at all.
I mean, if you are, you should, but you're not, so you won't, and that's different. You're alluding to the fact. So it's either you say it or you don't, right? But you did say unconscious bias, and what is the outcome? What is your preferred outcome to that complaint? Because people complain for a reason, and they want an outcome, or they want to vent, right? As someone who's worked in customer services, they either want something or they want to vent, and it's one or the other. What is your preferred outcome?
I don't want anything. Personally, I don't want anything. I would I'm going to tell you what I do want. I want an experience where I can go and buy cupcakes and have the same rules applied to me as the people who were 3, 4, 5, 6 customers ahead of me. Because the sales assistant didn't seem to care about it being 2 customers only when it was 3 girls and 2 Uber drivers, or 1 guy and 2 Uber drivers. It was only whenever it was 2 gay guys and 1 Uber driver that she was like, "Oh, wait a minute. No, I'm sorry, it's 2 only at a time."
But I think you can make the same point without alluding to the fact that it might be that, because all of those things may be correct or not, and that would be fine. Because one of the things that's really important, I think, for people to remember, and this is where people might say that like the race card is thrown out, or this is a conversation I'm having with like, my people around me about women's rights and stuff, is there is this case where one of the complaints is people will then use it all the time. And that's important to consider, because sometimes you have to pick your battles when it comes to what is the most impactful thing. I don't know if that is the fight that we want to have when it comes to people addressing their unconscious bias and how they treat queer people or people of color or age people. Like that might not be it. Because like I say, do you remember you went on? Do you remember you went on a date with a guy, and then he was like, "Was that you?" It was. Let's just anyway. We'll talk about it.
Yeah,
I don't know if it
me.
was you. Yeah, it was you. And you were like, "He did that because I was black." And I was like, "How did you draw that conclusion based on what had happened?" Right. And I think that this is one of those areas where it may well could have been true. It just might not be the fight for that day. It can be sensitive, and people are fighting for these things. I can only say for me, I don't know if that is the day that I would pick that. Especially when it's so loose from a brand that is known to, I mean, literally every gay loses their shit over a 5 out of 10 rainbow cake, as far as I'm concerned. And I don't like sprinkles. Okay? I love sweets, and it's overly sweet. But we still lose our shit over a rainbow cake.
On that point, just because a brand puts a rainbow flag out every June does not, to the points that we make every single year when it comes to Pride, they need to do more. And if doing more is hiring staff that are inclusive and won't turn out customers because they're holding hands, or enforce the 2 customer rule, the only time we're in that queue for 20 minutes, and the only time somebody was turned out of that door was ever me, Craig, and 1 Uber driver.
I can imagine why waiting in line for 20 minutes would be frustrating. And why then everything else around it might be frustrating.
Well, anyway, the lady I complained to, she's on maternity leave now, and she did say, I won't get back to you till Friday, but then after Friday, I'm on maternity leave. And I'm like, well, I didn't hear from you on Friday, so I don't know whether I'll follow up or not. I probably won't.
It might be worth leaving that one.
I think I've said my piece. Well, I have got bigger fish to fry with Uber. So Uber, right. So I would order a taxi from my house to go to Euston. The quickest way from my house to Euston Station is through Waterloo. When I book my Uber on the app, it tells me it's going to take me through Waterloo. It's going to cost me 13.76. They're usually pretty specific, even though they say this is just an estimate. We go in the taxi, and they don't want to go through central London. They want to go up and around to avoid the congestion charge. I'm like, literally on Friday, I was like, can you please go the Waterloo route? No, I'm not taking you to the Waterloo route. And I was like, well, why not? He goes, because I'll get charged congestion and then I'll lose money on this ride. And I'm like, but this is literally the route that I booked. I said, I don't care what route you go, but I need to get to Euston at the station at the time that I said I'd get there for.
And it's long to circumnavigate. Like, I know that it's long to go around the congestion charge.
It will take... We've done it. They've done it before. We've done it before, and we've missed trains.
For those that might listen to this and not be in the UK, in London, in the central of London, there's an additional charge just to enter it in a car. And now in lockdown, in particular, they've extended those times dramatically and increased the price because they need to start taxing people. And so you have to get from North London to South London, for example, you can either go through it or around it. And going around it is hell. I
first of all checked. I said, do you know the destination before you collect me? He goes, no, I only find it when I get outside. And I'm like, okay.
They always say that, yeah.
So what if I was going into central London? He was like, I wouldn't take you. I wouldn't have accepted this route. And I'm like, but you wouldn't have known until I got into the car where I was going to go. And he goes, yeah, so I just would have told you I can't take you. And I'm like, what type of customer experience is that? And he's like, it's not my fault. I don't want to get charged. And I'm like, well, I booked this. Anyway, I ended up just jumping out of the car, and he still charged me £6.
I've done that before. I've been like drunk, and then I've been like, oh, they tried to go the wrong route, and then I get an argument. I'm like, what the fuck you doing? Like, just take me the way that I'm supposed to. They don't. So I'm like, stop here. Then I get out, and as I get out, I open every door, then leave.
Well, I got off at Oval and decided to get the tube, and I said, you know what, I'm not even going to close this fucking door. And I was like, no, I'm above this. I'm going to close the door.
No, I'm drunk, so I'm like, no, fine. Open, and I'm going.
I wonder why I have such a low rating on Uber.
This week, we've got a lovely guest on, Becky, who, in honor, well, it'll come out the day after, on the 31st of March, so yesterday, is the Transgender Day of Visibility. And as we start getting more guests on, and we've recognised, or I'd say myself, that within my idea of what queer is, and Ash as well, that is still very particular, very narrow. I mean, we've only had our first woman on, for example, a cisgender woman, pardon me. And so we've got Becky, who's a transgender female, and also has a lot of experience in rugby, which is also amazing, because we love to shoehorn in our trans issues and trans rugby issues. So I just want to get it in again.
Yes.
I want to get it in again so they can just take it. All right. And so
Yeah.
this is a trigger warning. If you don't like shoehorning, don't listen because it was happening again and it's going to happen now.
Do you know what? I love a good shoehorn because it sears my fingers when I'm trying to squeeze on those shoes. I'm just too lazy to untie and tie up again, so I leave the laces tied. I like to just
Oh
a
my
wee
God.
shoehorn in the foot.
I didn't know that was what it was. I forgot. Ah, that's what a
You have a
shoehorn
shoehorn?
is.
Yeah, of course.
Shit. You know when you just realize two words make the same thing? Yes. Yes. I know what
No, he's an
shoehorn
idiot.
is.
No, he's an idiot. You know, I might go back to Hummingbird and like be an idiot for buying the homophobic cakes,
Shoehorn.
but shoehorn. Yes. For those who are listening to this episode for the first time, we're obviously referencing that 1-star review we got from that person who just did not like the fact that people of queer, one of them being black, talks about Black Lives Matter and trans rugby rights.
Well, I mean,
Anyway.
they're not that big issues, but yeah. So we're going to have Becky on.
Small issues. Tiny. Just
right now. Welcome back, everyone, and we're here with Becky. Hello, Becky.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Long day at work today. A couple more days and it's Easter holidays, so looking forward to some time off. I'm going down to home to Cornwall to see my dad in the Easter break. So see my mum as well. Spend some time down there with family because that's where I'm from. So It's just a stunning part of the country. I was really fortunate to grow up down there. That's where I spent all my childhood. Swimming, surfing, fishing, playing sports, playing rugby. You know, big rugby following down there in Cornwall. So, yeah, just really lucky.
Cornwall's beautiful. My ex was from Cornwall, so we went down a few times. But it reminds me very much of back home in Ireland. Like it's just all beachy and
Rugby coastline.
Yeah. I'm from the north coast of Ireland, so it's just like it's beautiful.
Yeah.
You could walk from the beach to the forest to a hill in like 5 minutes of each other.
Yeah.
You've already started telling us a little bit about yourself, but we brought you on just to learn a little bit about you and your story, and also just talk a bit about playing sport and rugby as a trans person. But just to give us a background, so what is it that you do, and tell us a little bit more about your life in Cornwall.
So I grew up in Cornwall, moved there at the age of 7 from Bristol and grew up down there and had an amazing childhood, you know, like I said, with the sports, the beaches, played for my county and region, playing football, rugby and did athletics. So I was very sporty. Later on, went into cooking, was a chef for a few years, worked my way up to head chef of a restaurant and then decided I had enough, didn't want to work the long hours for not particularly great pay. So I went back to university, trained as a teacher and then ended up in Kent. Whilst in Cornwall, I played rugby for St Ives Rugby Club. And when I go back, I still see a few of the lads who I used to play with. That was quite a topic of conversation when this all happened. But yeah, and then when I moved to Kent, I played for Folkestone first team for a few years and then stopped that sort of when I started thinking about transitioning and met my current wife. Told her 3 months in and she still stayed with me and married me, so that was really cool. So that was really lovely. Not many people would have done that. So we're still married, just I think.
She can't get the voice recorder working. She's out.
Yeah, that's it, yeah. She's my technical advisor on all the technology. She's the gadget queen, so she sorts all that out. And then I worked at the same school down in New Romney for 13 years, doing all sorts of things, taught PE, food tech, health and social care, and just started playing rugby for Ashford Ladies Club 2 years ago. Well, we would have played this year, but for the pandemic, but 2 years ago, I've been signed for them now and playing rugby for them. I do a lot of sea fishing as well, representing my country for England ladies fishing. Not contact sport, but still very, very hostile towards trans women in sport. But not everybody, don't get me wrong, it's not everybody, but there was a lot of hostility towards me to the point where my coach, who's my friend, still won't tell me what was said and things like that because it was that horrific. But I'm not the sort of person that lets that affect me so much. I just generally get on with it. And to me, it's just, I was always taught that if somebody's doing that to you, they're doing it because you're a challenge to them, so to speak. So I just use it for fuel to my fire, just to try that little bit harder in things and work a bit harder. But I know some people aren't. A lot of trans individuals aren't like that. A lot of my friends who aren't like that, very emotional. They've lost a lot in their lives, and I've been very fortunate. I'm one of the fortunate ones. Of my family and friends have been amazing. I've not had any negativity really to deal with him personally, not lost any brothers, sisters or anything. So that's been really amazing. Like I say, a lot of trans individuals, men and women, lose their families, lose everything, self-harm. It's horrific. And I just count myself lucky.
How old were you when you started to transition?
Quite late. Growing up in St Ives in Cornwall wasn't particularly... maybe if I was in the city centre, I would have seen more and had somebody to contact. Obviously, down in Cornwall, there's, probably much like Ireland, there's not, who do I talk to? Who do I speak to? And it was before, I'm 43. So when I was a teen growing up, the internet was just coming out. It's not like now you can go online and find all this help and people to speak to. And I started transitioning. So it would have been 2015, something like that.
It's relatively recently, really, isn't it?
Yeah. I've only been full time at work for this will be the 6th year this Christmas. So that was an experience coming out of school. Next day going in one day, and then going in the next day is me, and then all the kids looking through the doors and trying to see.
Oh my gosh!
So yeah, and it's a secondary school as well. So
how has it been at the school for you overall? Would you say?
I've been really lucky. My school's really supportive. The kids have been amazing. Haven't really had any issues, and a lot of the kids you can sit down and just have a conversation with, and if they don't understand something or they've got a question, that's why I'm so open, because they've got questions, they want to know, and it's better they learn it from me who's been through it than people who or just hear it on the news or hear the misinformation that's about, and maybe a comment that's passed by their family or or a friend who might just go, oh yeah, well they're all wrong in the head or whatever. They need to see actually that they're normal, real people. It's just, and for a lot of people, particularly where we are, because it's a coastal rural school, won't have the interactions that maybe kids will have in London. They won't have that pool of, certainly don't have it with ethnicity or religion. They don't have it with LGBT either, because it's a very typical, mostly white British school, and until you grow up or you've been and visited places, doesn't broaden your horizons. So yeah, but they're very good with it. I've never had any issues.
That's amazing. That's so good. What kind of things did the kids ask you? Not
so much now, but when it first happened, it was like they'd obviously get questions. Oh, your eyebrows look really nice, miss. And this was like before I started coming out at school. They're like, what have you done to your eyebrows, miss? Because things started to change beforehand. I was this PE teacher that was quite masculine, and so what made you think like that? And what do you have to do? Do you have to go? And then when I had the operation, it was a whole host of other questions. It was some bordering on probably inappropriate, but you try and sort of work around them. So, does it hurt, or does that mean you have a period, miss? Those kind of questions. And you're like, no, it doesn't work. So can you be pregnant, miss? It's like, but they're a lack of understanding. They just don't know. And
I feel like a lot of adults would ask those questions as well. I like, to be fair.
Well, we've had some interesting conversations at Ashford Rugby Club. I mean, they've been amazing. They've been really good. But some of the older players, they've seen me play, and I've played to quite a high level compared to the ladies who I play with. I'm not the biggest. I'm not the fastest. I'm 43. I'm quite slow for my age now, and I just plod along and do. But I get away with a lot because of my experience, because I play quite a high level, and I've got all the right technique for tackling. And you've got a lot of ladies coming in who've only played for like a year or two, and when their family or some of the men's teams, they come in and sit and watch the men's and have a chat, and they go, right, we've got some questions, we just don't get it. He said, how can you transition and you be So I like women still, and your wife is straight. How does that work? And I was like, well, sexuality is nothing comes after when you decide to transition. If you're a woman, you can like a man or a woman or both. And they're like, oh right, that just seems complicated. And then they ask, so what? We don't get it. We just don't understand why you would want to transition. So was it painful? Was it, what do they do? And they go like, what do they do with your nuts? When you had the operation, what did they do with your nuts? I said, they're probably in a jar somewhere in the hospital. But
Yeah.
they don't know, and they say, so what do they do for the operation then? And they like you're explaining to them how the operation works and all the treatment you got to go through and all the psychological assessments, and that actually you've got to justify to other people who you are. Nobody else has to do that. If you're lesbian, gay, bisexual, pansexual, you don't have to go through courts and psychologists to go, oh, this is who I am. But I have to do that. And every trans person has to do that if they want to transition. And then you have to get permission to play sport. I get that. And I'm quite on board with, the safety concerns. I get that, especially as a PE teacher background. I get the safety concerns. But you have to ask permission for everything you do. Legally, if I go into the bank, I have to ask permission to change my name. I have to ask permission to get my passport changed, to get my NHS number. So it's constantly asking for somebody to say, yeah, it's okay, you can do that. You're not nuts and you've got support. If you haven't got emotional support, they won't let you do it. And you're like, well, maybe I'd be happier if I was allowed to choose for myself. But, that's not the case at the minute. And it still seems a long way off at the minute.
How did you gain? We'll talk about rugby just for a minute, because that's something that we've been talking about a lot, about the trans ban and stuff, because I've got questions based around what you played at a high level before and how that might translate into what you play now. But did you need to get permission to play rugby now at the moment?
Yeah, so I had to. So when I had to submit my blood tests to make sure testosterone levels were lower, so that they were within a female range, and actually they're lower than most females. To be honest, they'll probably be lower than the average female that there are. I mean, you've got women who've got PCOS or polycystic ovaries who've got really high testosterone levels, almost in the male range. Mine's way down from that. Obviously, I had to get medical notes, and for me personally, it was like I need to send them that just to show them that I'm willing to. I'm quite open. I don't get offended. I say if somebody needs to see something medical, it's like just have a look at it. As long as I'm meeting your requirements, that's fine. But I can see how other people might see it as an invasion of privacy. I'm not that sensitive, but others are. But I understand why those protocols are there to make sure that it's safe for women physically. And I understand that.
Do you feel there are concerns about the safety of women in rugby when it comes to transgender people?
I get the concerns, but you've got a sport where there's already, if you've got, I've played rugby since the age of 11. I played mini rugby, and I played against guys when I was mini. I wasn't particularly big when I was small. When I was a kid, I was playing against kids who were, the size of adults. And when you play men's rugby, you've got a scrum half who might be 5'6", and you've got a second row who's 6'8". You've already got those disparities in size, both in women's, in all sports. In all sports, you've got those disparities in size. And rugby is the one sport that was okay for you to be different sizes to play. If you were a big lad and not particularly quick, all right, you usually chucked in the front row, but, or in the pack. Generally, that's the old, yeah. That's me now, yeah. But there was a position for everybody.
Yeah.
And even when I played men's rugby, I got put in the front row because nobody else wanted to do it. So I played loose head at 15 stone against guys who were 25 stone. Now, that's not fair. That's a 10 stone advantage. And at any level, that's that's a struggle. They're not being particularly talented skill-wise, but you try shifting 10 stone. I think there's more dangers with, and I've said this to several people, with the lack of experience. I've played women's rugby now for 2 seasons, and I've seen more injuries from novices coming in, not being able to coach, not being have played the sport long enough, tackling poorly, upright with a whiplash injury, clashing heads because they've tackled with their head up, putting their head in the wrong place, scrummaging in the wrong thing. They've got back injuries, neck injuries. I haven't hurt a single person. I might have hit somebody hard, but because I've done it in the correct technique and put it the right way, they get up and there's nothing wrong with them.
Yeah.
And I don't, they're not looking at the whole picture. They're looking at a simple grip strength test, which is what was done. So that, yeah, they're not there's not a comparison between, nobody's asked me to go and be tested. There's 3 active women, trans women in the whole of English rugby. 3. And none of us have been asked to go and do a comparative test to do with fitness, to do with physique against somebody of the same age or size or whatever. And I know that if I went to, I couldn't compete against the top ladies in their, the Premiership or in England. I'm not fit. I mean, maybe when I was younger, but I'm not fit enough or strong enough now. And they don't seem to be taking into account the effect of the medication and the operation and that. They go, oh yeah, but you still got an advantage because of this. So the only advantage I've got is because of my experience. I can see where there's a gap. I can see where there's a dog leg. I can see where there's space behind to kick the ball. Where a lot of girls and developing rugby clubs, they don't have that experience in their teams.
It's quite interesting you say, like they don't take into account how your body might change when you go through a process with, hormones or surgery and things like that. Do you know, and this is me just thinking about now, do you know how the ban affects people that transition, but maybe not medically straight away? Because, I mean, it's a whole process as far as I understand. And obviously you start at one point and continue to transition.
I mean, whether you go medically full transition, that's your choice. You don't have to. That's something that I chose to do. And I can see that some who may not have an operation or whatever, that might be, to me, I can understand why women might feel uncomfortable if a trans woman's playing who still has the same genitalia as they were born with. And that would make them uncomfortable. I wouldn't feel comfortable if I was in a male change room now, as they're proposing in America and places like that, using the toilet of your birth. I'm like, really? Have you seen trans men? Trans men, look, you wouldn't know the difference, some of them, because testosterone has that massive effect on your body. You can imagine a trans man going into the change room into the gender they were born in. And they're saying, why don't you form your own team? There's 3 of us. It's a non-starter. If you don't medically transition and you don't have the operation, I can see why you could say there might be more of an advantage. But that's why they have the safeguards in place. They do it a case-by-case basis. I think there's that stereotype that, oh, this man is going to be playing women's rugby, must be 6 foot tall, built like a tank, not look feminine. But that's not the case. I'm quite well built. I've still got my physique, my shape from rugby. Okay, including the gut that goes with it, and it just most trans women aren't like that. They're quite feminine, and you wouldn't know the difference if they're playing if it was cisgendered women on the pitch.
Yeah,
I unfortunately don't fit that category because of my size and my shape and the sport I used to play. So I get that.
Yeah,
and I do stand out a bit more. But I'm okay with that. That's me. I'm okay with that.
I think one of the good things you brought up there is rugby is a sport that I've always grown up thinking is a sport for everyone, no matter what your size, speed, whatever. It's for anyone, and that was always a perk of playing rugby over football, because football you always have everyone in my head had to be that athletic, skinny guy who was able to run fast and kick balls and. I'm shit. So yeah. I thought rugby was a better sport for me. And interestingly enough, like you say, it's even in, I think I've been injured playing rugby. Yeah. Matt, you've been injured playing rugby.
I've had some
it doesn't like, there's nothing to do. Like as a guy, I play against other guys and I get injured doing it. It's down to, and that 100%, as you say, it was bad technique. I tackled badly. I paid the price. So
That technique is so important because we play for a rugby club that introduced new adults to rugby within the King's Cross Steelers, and the most horrific injuries are coming from the really beginning levels. And I don't know, because falling when being tackled is a technique you need to learn, and it is bad.
Yeah.
The legs are broken ankles, and I'm like, I don't know how you did this, because the impact isn't even hard. They're not playing high octane rugby like some of our first team do.
No, it's just, honestly, I've seen some absolute shockers from girls, like, literally faces smashed in because they don't want to get their body in that position. They think if they put their head down there, their head's going to get hurt, their neck's going to get hurt. But actually, you're going to do more injuries tackling upright, whipping like that, or getting smashed in the face by somebody else's head.
I actually wanted to ask a little bit about your own personal journey, because I'm quite interested about maybe like the age that you started to transition and told your wife, and in particular, what were the feelings like growing up? Did you know growing up that you may not be the gender that you were assigned at birth?
I had an inkling from about the age of 12. Used to sort of take mum's clothes and things like that. It's generally how it starts, and then you go through periods of purging where you get stuff and you start dressing, and then you go, oh no, that's not right, I'm that's wrong. So you're struggling with it in your head, and I see that now as I'm older. I see that that's sort of kind of the journey. You get stuff and you go, oh yeah, no, I can do that, and then you go, no, I'm not doing that, that's wrong. Partly because you have nobody to talk to about it, and somebody to go, do you know what, it's actually okay. You know, if you're questioning yourself, it's okay to do that, but you need support in that. So I did that from the age, well, once I left home and I'd gone to uni and places like that, I purged and done that kind of thing 5 or 6 times. Sometimes went two years without dressing and things like that. Particularly when I went back to university to train, it's something it just didn't do. It was on my mind. But I just didn't do because I didn't have the opportunity. You know, sharing a house with students doesn't really lend itself to doing that kind of thing. And then it sort of come out more once I got a job, and I moved to Kent with the woman I was with at the time. It just started to raise its head again, and then again purged, and then our relationship broke down, and I met my current wife, and about 3 months in, we had not a row, but I got quite upset. I just said to her that I need to be on my own. I need to tell you. And she goes, "What's up? What have I done?" You know, because it was quite an intense. Our relationship when we met, it was quite intense. You know, it was like we went for first date, laid it all on the line about everything apart from the trans issue. Said we're tired of being messed around. So it was like first date, and we got everything out on the table, and then 3 months later I told her what I felt like, and she goes, "Is that it?" And I was like, "Oh, hang on, there's somebody here who, you know, is gonna listen and just be understanding." And she's South African, so she comes from quite a, you know, parents quite religious, but they're amazing. They're amazing people. They're lovely people. Initially they thought our relationship wouldn't work, but we've kind of proved them wrong, that actually we're very much in love. And, you know, we have our difficulties. It's not a normal relationship, and it does put stress on it. When I was going through my transition, it was like, you know, you're happy for me to start medication, my hormones, and she was supporting me. We're going to the doctors together. She was supportive, and she was like, I just need time to adjust. So we sort of had a time plan of going, right, we'll do this for now, and after a couple of years, we'll do this. It just mentally gave her time to adjust. So we didn't rush into it. We didn't go, right, it's all got to happen tomorrow, which is what happened. A lot of trans individuals go, I don't want this body. I don't want this. I want it to change. I want it to be different tomorrow, but it doesn't work like that. I mean, the waiting list now is crazy. I mean, you're looking at 5 years to get your surgery sometimes, depending on what support you get. And there are ways to trim the time down, and there are things you can do yourself, but I don't think a lot of people are aware of it because they're still struggling with that idea. Am I going to lose my family? Am I going to lose my job? I'm lucky I'm a teacher. There's nothing really the school can do. They've got to support me, you know, but other people aren't fortunate. If they're working for an employer who's a complete bigot and that, and particularly works in certain trades, like not all of them, but again, it's a generalization. But if you work in a very like construction or truck driving, I've got a few friends who are truck drivers who are trans. They've had a horrific time because not all of them are supportive. Much like going back to the fishing, it's a certain, I'm not saying all anglers are like that. A lot of them are really supportive, but there's this core in society that just won't accept it, that just struggle with the idea that, you know, when you say there's more than one gender, they go, no, there's two, male, female. And they can't understand that gender is a mental concept. Sexuality is, your sex is what is male, female, but gender is a mental construct, and they don't get that.
It's a conversation I'm having in my own household, to be fair. And, you know, remember my family's just like, I will not accept. And it's difficult because you come from a place of, you can never tell me otherwise. Like, it's impossible to then have a conversation because you've already drawn the line.
Yeah, there's no budget. And that's the thing. You will not, I'm going to say this the way, you will never educate stupid. And I know that sounds quite harsh, but if you've already formed your opinion and you're not willing to listen and go, oh, I never thought of it like that, or never see it from somebody else's point of view, then how can you ever move on? You're just going to be this rigid thinker. That's my tunnel vision. That's how I think. I'm not going to be, I don't care what's going on here or around, and it's probably because I'm a teacher that actually I've got to be more aware, because I've got students that I teach that my job is to make them aware of what's going on out there. You know, it's not just about the subjects I teach, it's about what's happening in the world, and what's right and what's wrong, and what's morally right. You know, how would you feel if somebody turned around to you tomorrow and said, right, because you're a girl, you can't play this, or because you're 6 foot tall, you're not allowed to play this? You know, you're starting down a slippery slope when you start banning people from taking part in things. Where does it stop? Can you not play tennis? Or let's look at other sports and go, right, because you're a certain size now. I know they have weight categories for certain sports, which is right, but certain sports like basketball, right, you can't play, basketball. Some of the players are 5'10". They're playing against guys who are 7'6".
Yeah.
You know, you might go down the route and start going, right, well, you can't play because you're too small. You can't play because you're too big. But, you know, so many people are born with advantages. Michael Phelps was born with an advantage. You know, you look at the Venus sisters, they were bigger and stronger.
Yeah.
And they had an advantage physically. Usain Bolt, his stride pattern, you know, all of these people had an advantage when they were born. You know, you look at Casa Samea, that's a shocking.
She's had to stop her sport. Yeah.
Stop her sport. She was born a woman, born into sex, no fault of her own, and she's been kicked out of her own sport, born as a woman. You know, and it seems to be becoming more and more. I was just on chat tonight with a group in America. There are 20 states that are trying to ban trans kids from playing in high school sports. They're trying to make it legislation to ban kids from taking part in sport. And it's just gaining more weight from people like the women's groups, which are Fair Play for Women. And you've got people supporting it like Sharon Davis and all of those sports stars who are supporting this thing. It's gaining weight, and we haven't got a voice. You know, they're getting all the media attention, but we don't get any media attention.
Yeah, because the person who connected us actually went for a position within this country as part of the RFU's Diversity and Inclusion Board, and wasn't able to get onto that position. But there's no one that represents anyone who's transgender, despite the fact that that is literally a hot topic at the moment. And I wanted to ask you in particular, it's difficult, I guess, in some ways, because it's unfair, one, because you're one person and your experience is different, but also maybe because you transitioned much older. But the issue with transitioning and transgender issues with children is such a big topic. Today in America, there's been like a second wave of a ban basically for doctors to administer any medical care to trans children in Arkansas. And we've had discussions, which is unfair for us in some ways, about what is right for kids to be able to do and to have, and when can they decide. Do you have any opinions about that?
Oh yeah,
I might then define the question if we need to.
So, I mean, we used to help run a support group locally, and we had lots of trans kids and parents come to us for support. Now, I mean, as a teacher, I've come across kids who are transgender or who are struggling with their gender identity.
In your school?
Not in my school necessarily. But
in school age.
In schools, within the education system. And there are loads of kids out there who are struggling with their gender identity or their sexuality, and parents need somewhere to go. And there's nowhere for them to go, really, because they go to their doctors, their GPs have no idea. They're not trained in it. And then you get sent to a specialist and you're sat on a list for X amount of years. And they have the same mental issues as adults do. I mean, I've wrote some statistics down about, self-harming, about suicides. The suicide rate in the T community, it's high in LGBT anyway, but in the T community, it's the highest for the percentage, for the number of trans individuals there are. It's the highest across the country. You can't get high, and there is no help for them. They're just saying, well, you're not 18, you can't make a choice. And I think, no, let them explore it. I'm not saying medicate them. I'm not saying give them medication, but there should be that mental health support that's there for anybody anyway. But specialist mental health support, there's not enough of it. There's not enough mental health support anyway. But there's not the specialist for trans kids to say, right, how do you feel? How can we deal with it? How can we help? And I understand the difficulty for parents because they don't understand it. I'm talking from a point of view where I understand it and I have a grasp of it. But you can probably imagine some of your friends and their kids turn around to them and go, oh, I want to be a girl, or I want to be a boy. And they go, oh, no, don't be silly. It's just a phase. And then they never speak up again, and they bottle it away. And then 5 years down the line, they start self-harming potentially, or they go down the route of drink, drug, because it's a way to cope. Now, I'm not saying that's what they all do, but that's one potential. I threw myself into male sports. I threw myself absolutely headlong into sports, and I didn't realize what I was doing at the time. I was like, that was my way of coping. I was like, no, that what I'm doing is, I feel like that, but no, really, I'm really, I'm a manly man. And I speak to the guys I play football and rugby with, and they go, you're nuts. When you played sport, you're the last person on this planet that we thought would be transgendered. I said, I remember when we played mini rugby and it was in the snow. You're the only idiot throwing himself around on the floor in the snow. I said, you were rolling around in the snow like you loved it. You dive at people's feet in goal. He said, you're the only nutcase to throw yourself at somebody's feet, and you used to come up with broken noses and kicks. I said, nobody else is nuts enough to do that. But you kind of throw yourself headlong into these masculine activities to cover things up, and you hide away. And that causes all sorts of issues. I had lots of anger issues. I used to go from zero to everything. And now I look back and I go, that's why I did it. But you don't learn that until you get older. And some people never understand that because they never get the help. And to ban kids in America from actually, sports meant to be for everybody. You look at all the sports that we play. So in this country, my stepdaughter plays rugby, mixed rugby, and she's at sixth form. She plays with the ladies team I'm at. She's 18, just turned 18, but she plays in the rugby academy at school. Now, they don't play the matches with the boys, but she trains with the boys. Girls can play football, soccer up to the age of 19 with boys in competitive games. You're going to take that away. That's a FIFA thing. That's not an English FA thing. That's an international law that regulation that you can do that. But you're going to take that away from all those kids. All that, the sport's a lifeline for half, the kids anyway, for the mental benefits, the physical benefits, and then and the social benefits of being part of something. And trans kids want to be part of something because they they're not part of something anyway, and then you can turn around and go,
Mm.
well, you can't be part of the girls' volleyball team, or you can't play netball. Netball's a non-contact sport. Why can't you play netball with the girls? Why can't you, throw a javelin or, do shot put or whatever,
Or fish.
or fish? Yeah, or fish. Oh, honestly, that's a non-contact sport. You wouldn't believe how. Oh no, you've got an advantage. Why?
What is the advantage?
But people don't see that. All they see is, oh, you're a Blake. You're doing this because you're a cheat. And that's what comments have been made in the past from sporting stars, that I didn't mean it like that. They're doing it to cheat. Well, no, you're doing it to be part of something. You want to be part of something. You want to, you guys know when you play sport, it's the camaraderie, it's a social interaction, which is as important and as much. And if you're injured, you still go along and support your team. You still go along and be part of that club. You don't just stop, and it just doesn't, because you can't play. That doesn't stop you from being part of that club. It really is. It winds me up massively. It makes me really angry.
It sounds like you're doing a great job of being a hero in your area and like being an inspiration to people as well. So I think
I don't see myself as that.
We've actually got you a badge. No, joking, it doesn't exist.
But do you know what I mean? It takes people to be brave enough to tell their story, and it sounds like in your community you've had so much great support around you that when people hear your story and how there is it's not just all doom and gloom for everyone, then it gives people the confidence and the comfortability. Is that a word? Is it?
I know
what
you mean. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
I think it is.
Yeah.
Is it? Oh, I'm smarter
made
than
me
I
a
thought.
word.
Yeah, it is now. I've coined it, but it makes them comfortable enough to like you say, explore that feeling when they're 12 or 13 or 14 or whatever it might be, and not feel like they're doing something wrong.
I mean, I think now with social media, and certainly the children that are coming through schools now are a lot more open to change, a lot more open to the differences in not just LGBT, but race, religion, all of that. They're a lot more understanding and tolerant of it. Not saying everybody is, but the vast majority are, because it's a different culture. Social media has changed it all, not just schools, but what you see on the news and the TV, and what you see that is okay. And you can go, well, there's a role model there on it. There's somebody acting, or there's somebody showing and telling, like you say, telling their story, or, there's a program I can go and find help just by looking for a support group and things like that. So there are more avenues now, and people are becoming more aware that actually it's okay. It's okay to be different. I mean, you see it all the time as a teacher. You see it all the time with children who are, some go through the gothy phase, some goes through, it's like girls trying on makeup, and boys go through different phases as well. With, everybody goes through a phase to find out who they are, and this is just something that's different. And it's much like I spoke to somebody the other day who's gay, who went through all the HIV in the 80s and the stigma that went through that. This is kind of the battle we're having now. It's very much akin to that. It's very much, well, we've accepted gay people, we've accepted lesbian, but this trans thing we don't understand quite. It's different, and now we're going to target that because gay people are quite a big in the LGBT, the gay, lesbian, bisexual. If you look at the volumes of people, the T is the smallest.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, oh, let's find the smallest minority. We can pick on them because actually people within their own LGBT don't agree with it or struggle with it. People within certain races and religions don't agree with it because it's against their culture. I mean, I can't go to some countries. If I went to some countries, I'd be locked up. My wife got offered a job in Qatar when I was transitioning to work in one of the airports there to do like managing the cleaning and things like that. It's a really good job opportunity. Told them our situation. Yeah, you can come, but your wife can't. So when you explain this to kids, I said, I can't even go on holiday to that country anymore. I wouldn't even feel comfortable going to America and visiting some of the states that are there. And that's meant to be the country, the land of the free. Well, you're not.
No.
I would say that we're very lucky here in the UK. I would say this is the most open, one of the most open countries in the world, where you have the most freedoms. Yes, there are other countries around the world as well, but you have a right to be who you want to be, and there are laws in place to protect you. Now, I'm not saying they're brilliant, and they could be improved on, but still, I'm allowed to do my job, and I've got protections in my job. And if somebody challenges that, I had hate crime recently, and I could phone the police, and they would deal with it. So, whereas if you go to America, that might not happen. If you go to places like the Caribbean or the Middle East, you've got people who are gay being put in prison, who are being hunted down for being gay. I can't even imagine living in a country like that, where you can't even stick your head out, and for the fear of being killed or your family being killed because you're lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, pansexual, whatever.
And being transgender, in some instances, in a way, is less hidden, is a bit more obvious. You can be gay and walk around under a cloak, as it were, because it's more internal than it is external. But for those who have external differences, it makes it more obvious and makes it difficult to then...
Particularly for, if you've look at somebody like me, I mean, I know my voice isn't particularly feminine. I'm okay with that. Okay. I do try sometimes, but I'm like, it's too much effort. But it's, I look at, like Gareth Thomas, the rugby player. Nobody had a clue for years. Nobody had a clue. Probably one of the most masculine individuals that you ever knew. And then you look at what he did, and he came out because the tabloids were going to come out. So he came out and he told all his story about HIV. What an empowering story that was. And like you say, you would have never known under a cloak all those years because he was worried about his position representing his country. Why should you have to worry about your gender or your sexuality to represent your country in fear of what other people would think and the hate you might get? That's a sad state of affairs, that if you live in a place that, or you're involved in a sport that would target you like that, or you're in a country where 20 states want to ban you from playing in a sport just because you want to be who you want to be. It really, and they're targeting children. That's what's worse. It's not okay to target anybody, but to target you're targeting the smallest community, and then you're targeting an even smaller community, the ones who can't defend themselves because they can't go to court and stand up because they can't voice their opinions as eloquently as a solicitor or whoever. And you're targeting children as young as 6 or 7.
We're not going to have children that listen to this podcast, but we do hopefully have some adults and then people. What kind of things do you think are important for people like me and Ash to correctly learn or advocate for trans people that we believe in? Because I know Ash and I 100% do, but I can say personally that I don't have much experience around transgender people.
It's just like anything. Just treat people with respect. If everybody wants to know how they want to be addressed. Do we call you Bex or Becky? Is like, so for example, there's a chap at the rugby club, I'm not going to say his name. I love him to pieces. He's funny. He says, I don't get why you are who you are. You're a lovely person. I get it. But if you don't mind, I'm going to call you Martha because you don't know whether you're Martha or Arthur. So he calls me Martha. So that's his way of dealing with it. He goes, right, Martha, like that. But I'm okay with that because he's not doing it maliciously. It's, it's a case of just treating people with any like I would treat anybody with respect that I meet. Say hello, good morning, how do you want to be known? When I came to the rugby club at Ashford, I just said to the lady, I said, right, it's probably perfectly obvious I'm transgendered. I want to play rugby. I want to help you as much as I can. Call me Bex, Becky, whatever. But again, not every individual's as confident as I am. I mean, you must have come across individuals who are, cis male, female, that are quite, not confident people. And you'll find that emotionally that most trans people probably aren't confident. They're quite shy. They've got things that they want to hide, or they're not wearing. I'm fortunate. I had my operation. I've had, my body looks the way I want it to look. Could be a bit thinner. Could be a bit, it could be a bit more feminine in certain ways, in my voice and stuff. But the people won't feel as confident as I do, and I know that. And it's trying to build their confidence to feel part of something and feel accepted. And most rugby clubs, to be honest, that's why I love rugby. Most rugby clubs, the respect that you've got to show for the referee, the respect you've got to show the other team, that's a given in rugby at whatever level you play at. I mean, I used to play football and I used to detest it, and I used to detest it as a PE teacher. You go to the games and you've got all them bad mouthing and shouting at the ref. Do you know? And that's the kind of culture that doesn't make people feel comfortable. You have that kind of banter in sport anyway. You know that if somebody's, and I think that's what gives me an advantage over other people. I grew up having that jovial banter where you're taking the mick out of your own teammates, or your coach, and they're taking the mick out of you. And for example, we were playing when I first started playing, and we started doing the first training session. I picked up 2 balls. I go, this is the first time I've had 2 balls in my hand for a while. But it's, if you can laugh at yourself and take a joke out of yourself, it makes other people feel comfortable. You're trying to put them at ease, but again, most people aren't like that.
It'd be good if everyone had the opportunity to have sport growing up, because I think sport does allow that. People are sensitive for good reasons in life, but sport allows you to feel included and to understand that not everything has to be so intense, and you have the ability to not hold on to things a lot more. So I think that that's really important for everybody to be able to have.
I mean, can I ask you guys a question? Have you ever come across a trans individual in sport?
No, I mean, it's quite interesting that even though we're the first gay and inclusive rugby club in the world, and we're the largest one in the world, we've never had an openly trans player, and it's never happened in London. And I'm not sure why that is, because there are other IGR teams that have transgender players, but we've never had one. I mean, I'm from London, and this is the longest conversation I would have known having someone who was an openly trans person. And I'm not sure, I think growing up as a gay person, I had my own preconceptions that I was well included in the queer society, when that is not true. It was still very narrow and very niche. But I just didn't find myself in those situations. It just hasn't happened that way. And I'm not exactly sure why that is. And I never sought it out. I never went out to look to find. I've never been against anyone transgender. I've never been against anyone.
No, not at all. But I just wondered if you'd experienced it within, your club or anything like that, or anybody you'd ever met or anything. But that just shows you, if you've not experienced it or you don't know people, how tiny, it is. I'm not saying that we've all had a breadth of experience, but there's such a small minority of people. They make it sound like we're trying to take over all sports.
Yeah.
And that's what it comes across like. And it's like, that's just not the case.
You wish more energy was put into things that were actually really, really important and impactful in some way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'd love to come up and meet you guys and watch you, when you play rugby season when it starts again, because you're not too far from me. I mean, I do my training. See, obviously I have to wear a hairpiece, and I tried wearing a scrum cap because I was self-conscious about my hair. So I don't play with my wig on, and I've got hair, but I'm missing a bit at the front there, a bit follically challenged at the front. And
Ashley knows how that feels.
I'm going that way.
I'm a little bit worse than that, but so I play without my hairpiece, and I've got a bit missing. So and all the girls were like, I said I feel really uncomfortable. They said don't be, and the girls made me feel that it was okay, and they supported me through that. And I don't like having my picture taken, like when we have a team photo, I have a cap on or whatever. But that's something else I had to contend with, and it's like, I haven't got full head of hair. I got most of my hair, but it's just that bit of the front there, like Ash, it starts to go as you get older. I thank my dad for that.
No boy.
So it's little things like that as well, and it's just going, it's okay, we don't care, it makes you feel part of something.
Well, we would definitely love to have you down, and I think if it's okay with you, we wrap it up there, because that's been wonderful.
Anytime you want to chat, I'm always available.
Beautiful. And then we'll go fishing. I saw the size of the fish, Ash, and I'll send you the pictures, but they're fucking huge. And I don't know who's going to be touching those with their hands, but that shit ain't me. I'm straight London. I'm straight London, bitch.
No, I mean, I do. So I've got my own. So I've just started up my own business for sea fishing tackle, and I've just started. I'll do a YouTube channel for my fishing videos.
I'll be there for the eating part.
Yeah, I'm happy to prepare some fish for you, and
Yeah.
do it on the barbecue. Could do some sea bass on the barbecue and stuff like that.
I'm there.
Good. Becky, thank you so much for coming
No
on.
problem. It's great to meet you guys, and it's lovely being chat to you.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Becky.
Thank you, Bex. She's so nice.
Lovely, absolutely lovely. I was I had the questions to ask, but once she started speaking, she was on a roll, and I was like, well, that's that question. I literally went over. I started ticking off. I was like, I got the answer to that one. I got the answer. The only one I didn't get an answer to is what is the competitiveness about fishing? I don't get it.
I love fishing. So before we were talking about, when I just started chatting to her, that she was fishing. And have you ever been fishing before?
I went fishing as a kid with my granddad, and I was so bored.
Oh, I love it. Maybe I'll go fishing then, just with Bex, and then you can come and join. You don't even like fish. I thought that was really nice of you to say, yeah, I'll come for the food when you don't even like fish. I thought that was really sweet. Well done.
No, I've started to like fish more. I wouldn't say I like all fish. I've had salmon a couple of times, and a few other fish. Like, yeah, as long as it's... I don't like slimy fish. I imagine if it's barbecued, it might not be too slimy.
The ones you showed me were white fish. So sea bass is a very light, thin, very light, very white. So you'd love it.
It's a bit like me.
Yeah, kind of fish. You're not light, bitch. Thank you everyone for another episode of Honest to Pod. You'll catch us on Monday for our segment, which is Movies with Matt, pardon me. And in honor of Transgender Visibility Day, wanted a transgender theme film. So that was and it might be to do with the cast or the actual story itself. So yeah, you'll catch us on Monday.
But Matt, thanks for a lovely episode. Thank you, Becky, very much for giving up your time, and thank you, listeners, for listening.
Have a lovely weekend. Bank holiday weekend if you're in the UK. Ireland, do they have a bank holiday weekend?
It's Easter.
Okay, I don't know.
Have a good Easter, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.